This show is a proud member of the Nerdy Legion Podcast Network. Get more at nerdylegion.com. Enjoy the show.
This is Brightside Home Theater.
Hey, welcome back to the Bright Side and issue number... No, I'm just kidding. Welcome to Brightside Home Theater, the podcast that's all about the sights, the sounds, the scenes, and this week, my anniversary. This is my 2-year anniversary, and for those of you that cross over between my two podcasts, you'll understand that open. My guest today is one of my best friends, my co-host over on Brightside Chat, and he hosted my anniversary show with me last week, helped me get my start in this home theater world. Actually, yeah, even that. And I don't think we discussed that this year. But we started in home theater together, messing around way back in the 80s. But he helped, we started podcasting together, and we talk a lot about that. We talk home theater, reminisce about what it was like when we started out with podcasting, and I just always love sitting down to talk with him. So this is my anniversary for the podcast, and I'd like to say thank you to all of my listeners for a great 2 years developing this podcast. I say it again later when I'm talking to John as well, because I really do appreciate each and every one of you, whether you comment or not. But everybody that comments, thank you so much. All my Patreon supporters, thank you so much. Everybody, you're all an integral part of this podcast. It makes sitting down here by myself like this just that much more fun. I mean, I knew I was going to have fun when I sat down the first time, but wow, sitting down week after week and just talking to you guys and then getting that feedback. But yeah, let's get into it. John's been very patient waiting in the green room, so let's get to it. John and I have a great conversation. I don't come back after that, so I say goodbye with John, and have a great week, everybody, blah, blah, blah. So I'll say it again here. Thank you again. Thank you very much. And here's my conversation with John. We had so much fun, but thank you to everybody. It's been a great 2 years and hopefully many, many more. All right, let's get to that interview. It's not really an interview. It's two guys hanging out. Hey, John, welcome back to Brightside Home Theater. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me back. It only took a year, but that's probably more on me than it is on you.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, you're right. You're right. Because
I'm sure if I texted you on any given week and said, let me come on your show,
John,
you'd let me come on.
That's a great open to this anniversary show. This is my 2-year anniversary of home theater, of Brightside Home Theater. I'm having you back because you were there my first year. You were there. You're the one that got me started in this. I mean, It was us together. I mean, it wasn't like you said, DJ, do a podcast. It was actually, we were talking so much down at your place that we're like, let's do a podcast. So it was a joint effort on our part, but it was your encouragement, us going through what we went through with chat and the ropes and the learning and everything like that enabled me to be like, you know what? I'm going to sit down and do the home theater one by myself, which that was the chore. And it's kind of like Dick Grayson going without the net. And, that's how people die.
Well, chat was like the first child and, got all the mistakes. And then this one is the second child. It was walking at 9 months, eating solid foods.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, I know. Because we started chat and hey, thank you to all the listeners. We have a lot of crossover listeners now, and this is my first. Before we start reminiscing and getting into our whole whatever, we will talk home theater here too. But thanking the listeners, they've been fantastic. I mean, I didn't do home theater to get people to go to listen to chat and vice versa. But the crossover listeners that when we first started, we wanted to do a home theater comics talk type thing. Right. And we just, even before we ever recorded, we started to mess around with it and test it. And we're like, it didn't flow well to us.
Right.
So we can't imagine what it would have been like if we put
I
that
don't know
out.
if any of those ever made it to air. Like, has anybody else ever heard one of those? No, just us, right?
No, because they were so bad. Remember?
They weren't good.
So
Yeah, they weren't good.
Do you remember? We were so bad at this. We were so bad at this at the beginning. And we love talking about this stuff because I remember when we first started, I was sitting in my theater to record. I had a little table with a laptop on it. And I remember
at the kitchen table.
Yeah, you were at the kitchen table, and we said, like, we're like, okay, we're going to record. And when we hit the record button, we both froze. like people were actually there. Like, we got stage fright, but I'm sitting in my theater, you're sitting at a kitchen table, and we're like, I don't know, what do you want to say? I don't know. So then we'd be so upset with ourselves. We'd go up, we'd call the next day and be like, yeah, that didn't go well. And we'd have this great conversation, and we're like, why can't we do this when we're recording? And it takes time. And
it does.
It takes time to learn how to talk like this. And not that we're professional by any stretch of the imagination.
No, God, no.
But to be able to sit down and be able to do the home theater podcast, it was everything that you and I went through together. And you do have a home theater background, but just in the hobby like myself.
Right.
And if it was up to me, this would have been our two-man show to begin with. Brightside Home Theater, I would have had you with me because I didn't want to go by myself, but you don't have that time. And I'm like,
no.
And to be honest, doing one by yourself is a lot easier schedule because you just do it whenever you can. And it's not up to both people's schedules and stuff. So that helps. But you've been on, the first year you were on quite a bit. We did a lot of Star Wars talk. That's
this
what we're going to talk about.
This is the third or fourth time.
Oh,
think.
yeah. But yes, thank you to the listeners for 2 years of growth. And it's been awesome, having so much fun. And you guys know, the ones that do cross over, you know John from Brightside Chat, where we talk comics. He's the owner of Arkham Comics and Games, comic book store. Yep. You're welcome. You're welcome. And you can find them on the website if you want to buy anything from Arkham Comics and Games.
You can.
You can. They have all sorts of comics and memorabilia and fun stuff like that. Just shop around. And games. There you go. And games. Yeah. John, the quintessential salesman.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Put it right out there.
But yeah, so let's get to a little bit of home theater here. Do we want to let the cat out of the bag? I've been holding on to this one for a few weeks since I got that text about your little snafu with Odyssey EQ.
I mean, it kind of disqualifies me from being able to be on this podcast.
No, and that's why I think it's a great service, because I'm wondering how many other people have done it and they don't even know it.
Yeah. Well, all right. So I guess to explain what happened, I have a modest home theater setup here at the house, and I have a dead-on receiver that runs Odyssey for calibration, and I use the app, the
Odyssey
iPhone
EQ,
app, rather than doing it manually through the receiver, and so
it's the $20 app that you buy after the fact to.
To do it basically through the phone. And, I've been doing it pretty much ever since I got the whole setup. Maybe the very first time I didn't use the app and I set everything up, but I added a bunch of speakers and stuff since then. So for all intents and purposes, I've always used the app and every couple of months I redo it. So I've done this at least half a dozen times, right, since I've had it. But, I do the calibration with the app. And for anybody that's ever used it, obviously you set up your mic and you take multiple readings around the room.
It's like 8 readings,
you do 8 readings. So at the end of each reading, it takes like a second and it uploads all the data that it just recorded. And it goes through 10%, 20%, all the way to 100, and then you can start your next reading. I was under the impression that was setting those levels while it was like that was the process of setting the levels. And so basically I ran through all my points and then I just shut everything down and thought that I had calibrated my system. And so
and to be fair, it still sounded good.
Right. To be fair, it sounded pretty good. Like I didn't realize I was not getting great calibrations. It didn't sound a whole lot different each time I did it, but I just figured like I wasn't changing my setup that much, so it shouldn't really sound different. And then I started going down the YouTube rabbit hole recently because I really wanted to get
as we all do
building a dedicated room, which I don't have. Like my setup is in my living room.
Yeah, it's a living room setup, which to be fair, that's kind of what Odyssey EQ is meant for. It's for that imperfect room, like where if you have a dedicated room, there's little or smaller tweaks to the system. Right. If you have sound absorption, you have good sound absorption, you have a dedicated room with it's a rectangle. Odyssey EQ doesn't have to do as much. But in a room like a living room where you have maybe some reflective noises and maybe a cove here and there where Odyssey EQ, or in the case of your Atmos speakers, maybe not perfectly placed.
Perfectly right. They're not in
Odyssey
the prime locations.
EQ can compensate for some of that.
Right. So, yeah, going through YouTube, I came across, a lot of people recommended home theater gurus. Mm-hmm. Between YouTube and the Facebook groups that I joined, everybody said, you got to watch home theater gurus. So I started watching some of their videos, and they had one titled Odyssey EQ. And so I watched that, and it was about a half hour, and it was pretty informative. He did most of it manually through...
I'd say very after this.
Yeah, he did a lot of it manually through the receiver, going through what each step was. But then he had some old ones saved on his iPhone app too. So as he was going through that, and he was going through all the different changes he makes, like what he turns on and the edits he makes. And then he says, when you get finished with all of this, you hit this little, the share button up at the top, and you send it all to your AVR to make all the adjustments. And that's when the light went on that I had never done that step. So I had never really finished calibrating my setup. And so I did that after this video, and I reran it again just so I had everything fresh. I made some adjustments based on, what he said he does. And I uploaded it to or downloaded it, whatever, to my AVR. And it was night and day. Like, what I thought was good before wasn't really that good after all. I had pointed out a scene to you a few weeks ago from Midnight Mass that I thought was pretty good. Like I said, and I already thought it was good. And I rewatched that scene with the new settings, and it was like, it blew me away, like how much better it was. And talked on chat earlier tonight about that scene from Invasion on Apple TV.
Yeah,
where
with the
locusts come and kind of envelope the main character, and like it literally felt like I was sitting in the locust. Yeah. Like it was just so great. And I was really discouraged with my Atmos speaker placement because they weren't, the guy that installed them didn't really do what I asked him to do. He kind of put them where he thought they should go, and I've never been that pleased with them because I never felt like I was getting any real response. I was getting anything out of them. And I noticed so much coming out of them the last couple days since I've done that. Because like you said, Odyssey corrects the distances and it does all those corrections for
frequencies that are shorter because of walls and, issues that you're going to have. Odyssey can make up for a lot of that. Obviously, you want to have, take care of your room as best as you can. But in a living room situation like you have, it corrects a lot of that. Especially if you have your ceilings are like 8, almost 9 feet, aren't they?
They're 9 feet. They're probably 9 feet. They're pretty high.
I wouldn't say your speakers are badly placed because it's at an angle. There's a certain range they can be in, and I'm sure they're in that range. It's just more of they were a little too far away, and they probably needed to be boosted a little. So that's, the Odyssey EQ will compensate for that. Right. And that's what and you saw the difference. And
I did. So
now,
needless to say, I felt like a giant boner after that. Because
I wouldn't.
was like...
Not at all, because that's something that I talked with Tom about it last week on, and I mentioned it to him. I don't even know if I recorded it. Tom Andrew and I recorded with him last week. I don't know if that was in the podcast or we just talked about it after the fact, but it's one of those things that you kind of take for, like, I didn't tell you. I've done Odyssey EQ a million times, but at the same time, unless you're somebody that goes back and goes, let me download this one, then I'll upload this one, then I'll upload. Right. That way you can compare them back and forth. Whereas you were always just going to all right, I'll just give it a checkup and give it the new setting, right?
Right.
But I like to tinker. I like to mess with it and like, okay, this is what it used to sound like. Let me upload that one. Now I'll go back to oh yeah, that's different. It's funny that it's something that most people would consider common sense, but then at the same time, it's not. And it was never specifically said to you, so why would you know? Like you said, your assumptions weren't invalid. And that's why I think it was great to get it out in the podcast to be like, I wonder how many other people have done that.
I don't know, man. Maybe I helped one other person, and then I feel vindicated.
Yeah, if you've helped, I'm sure. I know in my what did I do? I did one. This wasn't one like I forgot or I did something wrong. I did an entire review of one of my Die Hard reviews, one of the years, and I was talking about, Joe and I were talking about how good the bass was and everything. Right. And then come to find, and Joe was in the podcast. That was my my Christmas one that I do with Joe, and he's like, I didn't really notice. Like, I felt it was great. I'm sitting in the prime spot. Come to find out the next day on my Y splitter from my subwoofers, one had fallen off.
Oh, really?
So I was only running one subwoofer, which happened to be the rear subwoofer, which is behind me. So he's sitting next to me. He's not getting the same frequency response that I'm getting, but I was only running one at the time. And then I plugged it in. I was like, oh, now my room sounds really good. But little things happen that you didn't even.
They happen. Yeah.
It's technology, and that's what makes it so much fun. But yeah, so let's talk about that scene from Invasion.
Yeah.
That one scene, but I don't have a timestamp on it, but it's, if you've seen...
I don't either, but it's fairly close to the end of the show.
Of the first episode.
Of the first episode, yeah.
Excuse me.
Or maybe like 2/3 of the way through it. Because he goes there and then he goes back later at the end of the show. But I think this is when he's there in the...
Right,
for the first time.
Sam Neill, and he's in the field, and then like some locusts come at him, and he's in the pickup truck at first. Right. And then he has to get down on the ground. But I think what makes that scene so great is first you have the high pitch of all the that.
It actually got a little painful.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, so it wasn't great. But...
Yeah, you get the high pitch of that. But then as they actually come in, they swarm your room, fill the whole room. Your overheads are completely engaged. But it was those little bass notes of the locusts hitting the truck that I thought were like very not punctual. What's the word I'm looking for? That's like boom, like the popping.
They accentuate, like,
and it just really felt like your walls were being hit, like you were in it, and it was like dum 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 dum, and that's the bass that really amazes me. It's one thing, and like you and I were talking earlier, how you don't get that big thump that you want because it's your setup, it's your room. We could talk about that in a second, but even those the bass notes that you get, those little tiny individual bass notes, those are so much fun because they're like, how does the subwoofer, or how does it do it? It's like so fast, but it's still like it's so cool.
I don't know. Those sound engineers are pretty incredible. That the people that put those things together are amazing.
Yeah.
You know?
I remember watching all that stuff growing up and how they like make different noises, like it's not actually the horse galloping across the field.
Yeah, well, it's not really a locust hit. Yeah, there's no locust hitting your truck.
Right. They do something. They they figure out different noises, a lot like Jurassic Park, and they said like, all right, we're gonna mix these animals to create a dinosaur noise. But yeah, it's very very creative, very. I mean, they just mix everything up, and it just sounds so good, and it really just obviously it's part of why we love home theater to begin with. Yeah. It's just like being enveloped.
It's one of the most immersive scenes that I've been in. Well, especially since I calibrated my system correctly. But like even the storms and things that are known for being, great Atmos scenes. That one scene I thought was like just fantastic.
Well,
like I said, it was a little painful because it was a little high pitched. Like I'm surprised my wife put up with it and didn't make me turn it down.
Right.
But
you have to go back now and watch Hurricane Heist again.
Yeah, I know. I have to watch a bunch of things again. I'm going to go put on, Interstellar and, all these good things. And, but yeah, maybe Hurricane Heist again, just to see.
Oh, yeah, that is what I imagine Twister is going to be like when we get an Atmos or a DTSX version of that, which I've heard is coming pretty soon, I hope.
Hopefully, yeah, because that's a great one.
Yeah, it's... But yeah, so we were also talking earlier about your subwoofer situation.
Yeah.
And so tell everybody how you have 3.
I have 3 subwoofers in my room. Yeah. I have 2 of the what are they? The SVS PB2000s, I think. This the tall cylinder
PC.
The tall
PC 2000s.
PC 2000s. I've got 2 of those on the front soundstage, and then I've got SVS the PB12. Which is a 12-inch sub, and that's kind of behind.
Yeah, that's
behind
the older
to my
model
right.
that you've had for years.
I've had it for a long time, and actually, it was I took it off, and it was just in my closet. I wasn't even using it, and I was using the two PC 2000s like diagonal across the room. And then, I don't know, I just kind of stumbled into the closet one day and saw it sitting there. And I'm like, why am I not using? Like, there's no reason for this thing not to be in use. It's just sitting here. It's still, it's still a good sub. So I moved the other one back to the front and plugged this thing in. And, so, I mean, I've got, pretty powerful subwoofer situation happening in my room.
Right.
But like we were talking about earlier, it's an open floor plan living room, kitchen/living room. So like even if I close the door to my bedroom, like even if I close some doors off or whatever, which I try to do, it's just such a big wide open space that I just can't get the
sound pressurization
the bass response. Yeah, I just can't get the bass that I want in that room. I've tried different calibrations, like even you and I mentioned briefly, I might look into one of those mini DSP things and see if that's going to help at all. But I don't know that anything I do, even professional calibration, is going to come in and really be able to solve that problem because I just don't have a rectangular pressurized room,
High ceilings. So, you got a
like
lot of cubic ceilings, footage there.
And again, I've got there's a sofa and there's curtains and there's an area rug, but I mean, it's hardwood floors. It's tile kitchen floors. It is not the optimal setup for home theater.
Right.
It's just it's what I can do. So I've done, I do what I can to make it as good as it can be, but, I'm going to have to live with some limitations.
Yeah.
Because it's just the way it is. But yeah, I just don't get me wrong. Like there's some scenes where it'll shake my walls. Like the bass goes through the house.
You have the power to shake your walls.
But I don't really feel it. Like I don't feel it in my chest. I don't feel that thump. I don't get that.
Right. Well, that comes from pressurization. Wow. You've got to fill the room. And for you to fill the room with that kind of pump,
I'd need 15 subs. I mean,
and it would probably blow the windows open.
Probably.
So that's why I was saying the idea of actually putting the transducers, bass shakers in your sofa, it would add to that. I mean, you have enough power in the room to get the sound, but to get that feel. I think it would go a long way for your experience, and I think for Lydia's too. I think she would actually, because then you wouldn't have to, even if you don't get the reference level, but you tune those bass shakers to the point that it's like, you know what? It wouldn't be painful to her, and she would be able to. You'd be able to feel it. It gives you that added experience. I mean, I honestly think some people consider them gimmicks, but I think they're in a situation like yours. I think they're perfect. And
they may work. I'm definitely gonna look into it.
I think in your situation, if you didn't tell somebody, they would think you just had great bass response in your room.
They wouldn't know. Right?
Yeah, they'd just be like, especially the way your couch is situated and everything. And if you could get that couch, get the feel in that couch, people would be like, whoa, because you don't know that that's what it is.
Right. Nobody's going to be laying on the floor looking up underneath my...
So I think that would add to your experience. And again, that would make you just go back through all the movies again.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, let's see. What else? Oh, we've talked about, I'm going through all my movies right now because of the Lumogen. And that makes movies and streaming and everything like that. And
I'm a little jealous there, but I don't know that it would affect my TV as much as it does your projector.
Everything that I've read about them leading up to my purchase was they really are geared towards projectors.
Right.
Like highly recommended to the point that, I mean, the owner of the company says you should get one of these when you get a projector. But a lot of other people were saying it as well, to the point that if you can afford a certain, like, say you have a budget for a projector, include this in it. And then get a cheaper projector.
Right, get a lesser projector and get the Lumogen.
Right.
Of course, that's the guy that owns Lumogen telling you to do that. So.
Yeah, I would say if you're in the market for a $10,000 projector, that's kind of the ballpark, because the Lumogen's going to cost you probably $5,000 to $6,000, but then you get a $5,000 projector. You're kind of, in my experience, I experienced my projector for 2 years without it.
Right.
Had it calibrated, and I thought what I had was an awesome image. Then I added the Lumogen, and the experience that I've been having since then is nothing short of amazing. And I'm not here to sell product. I'm not here, that's not what I do. It's just, but having gone through what I go, my career, not a career, but my time in home theater, is having seen all my images all these years and having so much fun going back through the first day I had it. And I'm looking at all of, like, going through Star Wars, going through all those different images that I watched, and I'm like, I didn't know that was there. There's stuff like the opening scene to Avengers. Remember the first Avengers movie, and Coulson, they're at S.H.I.E.L.D., and Coulson's got what looked like, the first time I saw this movie, I always thought he was wearing a blue shirt.
Right.
Then you come to find out, as it progresses, you get a better picture. Oh, it's not a blue shirt. It's a blue shirt with white stripes in it. And you see those white stripes, and you're like, oh, wow. Well, what I'm seeing now, it's neither.
Oh, yeah.
It's blue stripes and white stripes.
Oh,
there's
really?
there's stripes inside you're like, there's so much more detail there. The Matrix, the opening scene of The Matrix, there's actually, when they do that and they have all the scrolling going, the green numbers are going down. There's actually like charcoal black, very dark numbers behind those.
Right.
That I could never see before.
Right. You never see them.
And but you didn't know what you're missing.
Right. You don't know that they're there because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. And it just heightened everything. And you want to go back through and see all of this stuff.
You want to watch every movie again.
Yeah. Just jumping scene to scene to scene and just enjoying it. And that's basically what I've been doing for 30 years. That's what we've been doing. But, you get something, you recalibrate or figure out you've calibrated for the first time.
Right.
And you're like, hey, let me try this. And it's a lot of fun, but it's not a cheap product, but
no,
it definitely,
well, it's not a cheap hobby. So
no. And that's
if you're into this, it's not about the money. You know what I mean?
No.
Obviously, we all have limitations with the amount of money we have, but
Right.
it's not a hobby it's not for the weak. Let's put it that
Right.
way.
Well, I've sacrificed a lot. I mean, I'm
Right.
like, I've given up on other things. You're like, oh,
Right.
it's so funny. I've had friends that have had or smokers. They're like, I'm like,
Well,
you know
yeah,
what? How
it's
much
a-
you could have?
It's a
if you-
$20. It's a $20 a day habit.
Right.
You know?
And it's like, oh yeah, well, how do you do that? Like my buddy, he's a smoker, he's a fisherman, he buys boats, he buys all this stuff, and he's like, he comes in, sits in my theater. How do you afford all this? What are you kidding me? He's got a $40,000 bass fishing boat. And he's smokes and dips, and I'm like, if you got rid of your dipping habit, you could have a home theater.
Right.
That's even
Yeah,
more
it's all-
expensive.
Right,
And-
it's just all about where
priorities.
you prioritize.
yeah. It's like, I mean, I love kids, but I stopped at 2 so I could have a home theater.
There you go. There you go.
Not like you.
That's why you don't have 10 grandkids.
I know.
That's why I don't have a dedicated room, because I have 10 grandkids.
Yeah.
You know?
That collection behind you is quite the collection.
Well,
though.
that's true too. That's half a theater room right there.
There you go. Yeah. But yeah, so any other good scenes you've seen lately? This being the anniversary show, I gotta have you back more often and do movies.
Yeah, well, I don't know, nothing that comes to mind. I mean,
Let's get a little bit to. We got to touch on Star Wars because
Yeah.
that is our jam. Everything seems to devolve or evolve into a Star Wars
back to Star Wars.
conversation.
Yep.
You haven't seen it recently. I touched on it a little bit before the show. Return of the Jedi, because last year we talked Empire. I opened my show talking Star
With
Wars,
Star Wars.
because that's the show. That's pretty much affected our lives, and it's
Yes.
why you and I are here today. So we won't rehash that. But Return
Well,
of the
besides
Jedi.
what my parents did.
Oh,
You know.
boy. This
I
is-
mean,
Here we go. Here we go. All right. We're getting into bright side, dark side here.
yep.
All right. All right. We're going to bring out some audio from the other podcast.
Oh my.
All right. So, see, you got me all just
I know, I got you all
discombobulated
flustered.
here. All flustered here. So, what did you think? We'll revisit this a little bit. The entire collection. What did you think of and I always call them the first three, the original trilogy, when it got released in 4K? What did you think of
Well, I
all
actually
of them
thought.
and Jedi?
Well, I thought the original three movies benefited the most from the 4K transfer. You know, like I thought
Yeah.
they were the most improved, and I think
yeah.
they looked the best. You know, even
Do you?
well, it's hard to say because like the new trilogy, obviously it was shot with modern equipment and
Right.
it looks pretty good. But I thought they looked better than the prequels,
Yes.
and like I said, obviously benefited the most from the 4K transfer. So, I mean, as far as all three, as far as whether Jedi looks better than A New Hope or whatever, I think they were all on par. Like I don't think Jedi was any better or worse than the other two, but
Okay. I thought,
you know.
for one reason or another, I thought Star Wars was the best one, but that might also be my bias to A New Hope.
because we both think it's the best.
Right.
Even though it's not technically the best movie of the bunch, it's still always going to be number one.
It's-
at least for me.
Exactly.
You know.
We've had that discussion. We've had that numerous times, sometimes just hanging out.
Right.
But yeah, I think they all benefit, and it's funny because of the different ways they were shot. Not shot, but I'm sorry, the environments that they were shot in. You have
Right.
Hoth looks fantastic now,
Yes.
but in Jedi, so does the jungle theme that you end up with on Endor.
Right.
That looks the greens, the lush greens,
Yes. It
that
looks great.
speeder
it really
chase,
looks great.
all of that. It looks great. I just felt maybe that's what it is. It's just when those things are going on, I'm just not as into the movie itself.
Yeah.
You know, I like the movie, but I'm just Hoth. I love Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, well,
But-
the whole Endor Ewok situation is
not
the best.
Yeah, that was where, what was it on chat? We were talking about how Star Wars was geared towards kids. And that was the first, almost like Empire was geared towards adults almost.
Right.
It was scary. I mean, you've got, Luke, I am your father. You've got maybe some incest going on. We didn't know it. Almost Game of Thrones-ish. And if they'd gone in a different direction, we could have had Games of Thrones.
It was Game of Thrones before Game of Thrones.
Yeah, exactly. And
but yeah, this was the first time it really felt like it was aimed at kids and selling toys, because not to get into the history of Star Wars, but George Lucas's original idea was that it was Wookiees, and
right.
It was on Kashyyyk and it was Wookiees, and the studios wanted to sell toys. They wanted something a little bit more kid friendly, and that's where the Ewoks came from. So that was really the first time in the trilogy where I felt like merchandising informed the story.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but I think in like the home theater environment, you have desert, you have Hoth, and then jungle. And
you have swamp too, because like Empire has the Dagobah.
Yeah, you have a little bit of Dagobah.
It's dark.
It's
dark, but I mean, you still get the detail. Like it looked
There's
the
a lot
4K
more
detail there,
yeah.
right? As opposed to, I mean, maybe when we were kids and we saw it in the theater, it was there, but we didn't notice it.
Next week, I'm like, okay, I forgot to go check that scene with the new Lumogen. Okay, let me write this down.
Yeah.
Go check out Empire.
Go check out Dagobah.
Cave scene.
Right.
It's like, but yeah, they all did benefit. I thought, and I know we already talked Star Wars, or I did anyways, but Star Wars in the desert, it used to be so grainy.
Right.
The way it looked. And it looks so much better. It's so much cleaner now. And you and I
can count all the grains of sand.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So, I'm still going, but I can do it.
Yeah. You've always said, like, you don't even like the movies as they are now, but the fact that they're restored is, you've got to prefer watching them that way.
I do. I have the Star Wars despecialized editions.
I do as well.
Which are my preferred versions of the movie. And those, I got those prior to the 4K release of the Star Wars box set. And I actually was very happy with those. Like, I thought they looked great. They sounded great. I mean, obviously they're not Atmos, but I mean, they looked and sounded great. Like, I got those and I had kind of resolved myself that was going to be the way I was going to watch Star Wars going forward.
Right.
Anytime I wanted to watch it. But, obviously the 4K set came out, and there's 6 other movies in addition to the original trilogy in there that weren't, altered by special editions. And so I was always going to buy that set. There's no way I wasn't going to buy it. And after watching them, in the 4K restoration with Atmos. Reluctantly. I mean, it is like that. That is still, they're better, because they look better and they sound better. And I have to put up with Han Solo stepping on Jabba's tail, and the guy singing in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah,
but
Greedo shoots first.
Yeah, McClunky. I have to put up with McClunky, but they're just superior. Like,
they're so good.
I can't imagine them. I mean, at some point we'll have 8K and then we'll have 12K or whatever. But I can't imagine them being better. Like, there's just feels like they've kind of
by the time they're better, our eyes will be worse. So it's a push.
The problem is they're so good now that it's like going back and watching remastered footage from like the old Star Trek show. Like, it's so good now that you see the flaws.
Right.
Like, I don't think you want them to be any better.
Yeah.
Because you can literally see them standing in front of the paintings of the Millennium Falcon, and like, it's so obvious that I don't want it to be any clearer than that because you almost want it to dial back down again. Let's go back to 2K so that
in Jedi, I was just watching this earlier. One of the opening scenes when they're in Jabba's palace and they bring in 3PO and R2 and they're now like owned by Jabba, so they're taking them to the back room to like where they kind of Jawa them like they did
they give them the restraining bolts and all that stuff.
And you see that one that they flip over and they're going to like brand his feet.
Right.
Remember that? And you can hear the little guy scream. He's like an R2 type unit, like a dumpster with legs.
You can hear him
trash
screaming
can with legs.
in pain.
He goes, ah! And he's screaming, and his legs
feel pain.
Yeah, exactly. Like, who programmed that? Because if I could get rid of that program in me, I'd be much stronger for it. But when the branding irons come down on him, they never touch his feet. But you see the steam shooting out of his feet up into the air. And it's like, I mean, John, it's like he's like an inch and a half away. It's like not even close. And then it's a later shot where they actually were down a little lower and they do it again. And it actually looks natural because because of the angle, you see that it's not touching. Right. And so, it's a little, this is like, it's like dead on, and you're looking at it going, he's not touching him yet. And
he's screaming, and he's got steam coming up.
The same thing happens in Terminator 2. And in Terminator 2, when Schwarzenegger walks naked into the bar, and he's like, give me your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle. And then he's like, no. And he throws that guy from the pool room, and he throws him through like the chef window or whatever, and the guy lands on the stove. And if you look, his hands are going up and down on the stove, and you can see the jets that are shooting the smoke out. The steam out. The same thing that's going on here in Jedi, they're doing, and this guy's going, ah! And it's like, it's shooting the steam out. And you're like, that's kind of ruined now. I thought he was really burning his hands.
Exactly. I thought he was method acting. He was like Christian Bale.
But there's a lot of that going on. And I think that's
because these things were never intended 40 years ago, 50 years ago. They never thought people would be able to look at these things with that kind of clarity and detail,
Well, I used the Jaws one. I told you that one where the shark has the Sharpie eye.
Sharpie, yeah.
it's like, it's clear as day that it's drawn on there. And you're like, but you can't blame them.
Right.
But it's like,
because it was 40 years ago, 45 years ago,
But what's funny is that's what I was going to say is that's why I think, like you said, the original trilogy looks really good in 4K. The sequel trilogy, the last three, those obviously were shot with this technology, and they do. They look and sound fantastic, I think. It's the first three where they're kind of in the middle.
Yeah, I thought they were the worst. Like they actually suffered a little bit from the upgrade.
Because we were upgrading and we're getting to see, like, they did a little bit of, like, Yoda's digitized instead of, whereas the puppetry in the first one, the 4K, you just kind of like, wow, that looks good. And they're like, and I'm sure they cleaned it up, too, digitally. So you get the best of both. Whereas, I don't know, those are that original trilogy, especially some of those long shots of the fields and stuff, they just didn't look natural enough. And it kind of really suffered. So, and
we talked, like, when we were going through these a year ago and we talked about each movie, I know we talked about that with the prequels. There was a lot of scenes in Coruscant, in like Palpatine's office and things where they like look so much like just cardboard cutouts. And it's like this looks so bad.
Yeah. And it kind of takes you out of it. And
it does.
But at the same time,
that's why I'm saying I don't want them to keep, like, they don't need like 8K or 16K or whatever, because then you're going to, like, at 16K, you're going to be able to see the hand up inside Yoda. It's just like, I just don't need to see that,
Star Wars starring Jim Henson.
Yeah. So, if content is created in 16K or 8K or whatever, it's going to look fantastic. But these things weren't meant to be seen that way. So
no, but
I don't know.
It's so funny because you come to a point diminishing returns, and a
Right.
lot of it is done now. Like when you get to 8K, I think actually anything over, we're already there. There's,
Yeah, 4K is already about as high as you can go.
yeah,
you know?
because like unless you're getting into like a projector size at 65 inches, I don't think you can distinguish. Your eye can't
Right.
distinguish 2 from 4K.
Right.
So getting to 8K, what's the difference?
Right.
But where the technology to me is going to be important is if you can get to 16K, you can shoot it in 16K, and now you
Right.
can manipulate that, blow that up, and do what you want, and put it out in 4K, and you can shrink things down, and you can do a lot more with the imagery that you've shot in that 16K. Displaying it in 16K, I don't think that's as important.
No, but like you said, when you're at a 150-inch screen or things like that, then obviously you'll be able to still see some difference. But on any kind of LCD or OLED TV at 85 inches or whatever, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. So
yeah, it's going to be more. Honestly, I think it's more about the HDR, and that's the technology that we can get. And again, like I was saying with the Lumogen, that's what the Lumogen's doing. It's just
tone mapping, right?
Giving me the ability to see everything that I can possibly see on a 110-inch screen.
Right.
Whereas you could do that with an OLED, but not at 110 inches. And now you can get that. And if they can improve that technology, that's what'll be for the masses. I think that's what's going to be. But how do they market that? Because they can market numbers. But how do you go HDRR? Even better HDR, or it's hard to sell that.
We already have
people.
HDR plus. We have HDR.
HDR 10,
and then we have HDR 10 plus.
Plus,
so it's gonna be plus, and then,
Dolby Vision, and it's nobody can decide on which one. Like the idea of Dolby Vision, I was talking with Rob H about this the other day, and we were saying like Dolby Vision is great if everybody used it, because then that's the tone mapping. So if every product had the Dolby Vision, it would send a clear definition of what it needs to do for tone mapping, and you wouldn't need to have Lumogens or a Panasonic 820 to get it to work a certain way. But of course, that's not going to happen because not everybody's going to agree, and people want to make money their way. And it's like, well, Dolby did it. Well, I'm going to do it better this way, or so nothing's ever worked in one particular way. Why would that be the case on this one? So,
well, again, until there's a winner, there was HD discs and there was Blu-ray, there was Betamax and there was VCR, or VHS. So if there's a way for one of them to become like a clear winner, then that's what we'll have.
But you know what's funny is in a lot of the cases, the one that's better is the one that loses.
Right. Because I thought I had an HD DVD player, and I thought it was
both.
better than Blu-ray.
Yeah. I had them both, and I can't say that HD DVD was better looking and sounding. It had far less issues. Blu-rays, I had them both, and the Blu-rays, the early Blu-ray players, you'd put a disc in, and it was like, go get yourself some popcorn by the time this bad boy loaded up the movie, right? There was bad load times. It wasn't until I think the PS3, which was basically a gaming computer, that was able to speed up the load times.
That was the best Blu-ray player on the market.
Yeah.
That's why I bought one. That's how I convinced my wife to let me buy one.
There you go.
Then I got some games, but I told her.
Yeah.
And honestly, I wasn't lying, but that's why I wanted it. It was to play. Was for Blu-rays.
Yeah.
I've
got listeners now that they're saying just got a hold of a PS5, so now I can get 4K discs.
Right.
And they're getting it through that. It's, gamers coming in. So, Sony's not stupid. They're very good at selling content, and they're very good at producing their content too. Some of the best they're, what was it? IMAX Enhanced. Their movies are coming out. They're looking to push the envelope in home theater. There's very few discs that I know of. I can't even think of one off the top of my head that I would think of, like a Thor Ragnarok, that didn't come out good from Sony. They all come out really good, like Venom. the Spider-Man movies. Sony Studios, their stuff comes out. Their discs always come out really good. I can't think of one.
Right.
Listeners are probably like, "What about this one?" Okay, maybe I was wrong.
Maybe. Right.
But yeah, pushing that envelope. I don't know. I couldn't get better. Maybe, but because watching Jedi again, and even the lightsabers now, seeing that every year, and I always go back to Star Wars, but even in Jedi, when he first lights up the green lightsaber, and remember what that was like. It's like, what? Why is it green?
Right.
It's like, and I know you know the story why it's green now, right?
Well, it was all about the just about the
backdrop
and having it stand out, right? Having it stand out against the backdrop,
the blue sky and the desert floor. And it was like, well, if we do the blue one, it might get lost in the sky. So let's do the green one. But then there's Star Wars lore, isn't it? Wasn't it supposed to? You might know that one better than me. I know that there was something about it people had made up.
Right. Well, there's a reason. He has to build a new lightsaber because he lost his hand in his lightsaber in Empire.
Yeah.
And so,
somebody has it.
There's, well, that's true if you look at the comics. But yeah, there was there was some kind of reason that in the story why it was green. I don't remember it. But yeah, going back to why they didn't just give him another blue one, because I think that's all we had seen, right? We'd only seen blue and red.
Yeah.
In the first two movies, so to even think that there was another color option available was like, what's going on here?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was it was all new to us, and it was well, even the only one to have purple was Samuel Jackson, and he requested it.
Right, but you didn't get other colors until
then,
until the prequels. Because when you see those long shots with all the Jedi, I think there's white and yellow or something. There's all kinds of colors in there.
Right. Yeah, they've added in the white one. The white's the latest one.
The whites were Ahsoka.
Was that Ahsoka? What did Rey have at the end? Did she have
yellow?
Or yellow? That's what it was.
Yellow. Yeah.
Had anybody had that before? I don't think so.
I think some random nameless Jedi, like in those scenes, like I said, I think there was other colors in there. But
yeah, like in the Clone Wars.
Ahsoka were white. Her second sabers were white because she wasn't a Jedi or a Sith. She was, But, and I don't know anybody else that has white, but yeah, I don't know. Back to the green.
Back to the green.
We digress. See what happens.
We could go off. Getting back to the movie though, and how I think, like, I didn't remember watching Jedi. I found that there was some soft parts. They were like at the end. Watch when they're, for me anyways, I felt like the Emperor. So you have that scene when he's sitting on his like throne, and you have the window kind of behind him and space and everything, and all the window and everything looks great. And he kind of looked a little out of focus.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, but the window looks very sharp. Like you could see all the panes. You could see the bars that are holding the windows in place. Obviously, you could see the stars in the sky in space behind him.
Well, and there's the battle. There's a battle happening behind him, right? So
yeah, there was that. But he felt like that felt a little bit soft. But then at the same time, there was great detail much earlier in the movie when they show Luke coming in from the desert. Jabba's palace opens up and he comes in, and you have that bright light coming in behind him. Right. And when we grew up watching this movie, it looks like he's wearing this heavy robe. Right. But you watch it now and the robe's like practically see-through. Oh, because you could see the light coming through around his neck and everything, and it's a very light material that we could never see that before. It just, there's so much more being exposed because we didn't have those capabilities. I'm sure obviously it was on the film.
Right. It was filmed that way, but we never saw the displays we got.
Yeah. And going to the movies and being able to see that in a movie theater that had a great system, a great projector, and a great projectionist to be able to play this for you and be able to see it without, you didn't notice that stuff.
Again, and the quality of theaters 40 years ago weren't that good either. You know, they were probably using 40-year-old equipment 40 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it was just, they weren't about the presentation like which is funny because Star Wars is what kind of facilitated theaters to start upgrading sound and projections. But prior to that, it was just like you got whatever they had in the old theater in your town,
2-channel, 4-channel sound, and that was it.
There was no upgrades. There was no anything. So even those details, if they were there, you weren't going to see them.
No.
So.
No, and that was to get stock. Didn't you have to get the 70 millimeter cut? You had to have what was it, 6 channels, 8 channels? I talked about it first year.
THX, whatever they had.
Well, it wasn't it was Dolby Surround.
It wasn't Dolby Surround.
THX came out shortly after in the 90s, I thought. THX, Lucas.
Yeah, it was the 90s. But yeah, you had to have the
Dolby Surround.
You had to have the
6
upgraded
channel
sound,
Dolby Surround, and all of that, and to be able to get the 70 millimeter, the good 70 millimeter cut. Otherwise, you just got, I believe it was the 35 millimeter or something like that, whatever it was. You got those.
But how many theaters in those times didn't care? Like they were fine with the 35 millimeter,
right?
Reel,
But I want to say that before I used to know these numbers off the top of my head, but when Star Wars started out, there were like 10 theaters. And then after Star Wars around the country, it was like 70 theaters had 70 millimeter capabilities. Right. So Star Wars did help spread that and get people to notice this stuff. And then, of course, jumping ahead to the 80s, it obviously birthed people like myself and home theater. And then once we were able to take this in with VHS in the home and you want to re-experience that. And I think it's movies like this and the entire, well, at the time it was only a trilogy, but trying to be able to recreate that in the home. And a lot of, like we said before, it's like the sound designers and stuff. Right. How many of these sound designers started just kind of like what we're talking about right now, just wanting to recreate stuff and do stuff like what they did with Star Wars.
Right.
And look at everything they're doing now with Star Wars and Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau and they want to recreate stuff that Lucas did. They want to do that. And the same with the sound designers and home theaters. And we joked about like, oh, you got to go back and watch Hurricane Heist. But are we really into Hurricane Heist if it wasn't for Star Wars? Like we are, because like I said, when I recommended that movie and I told you about it and you ran right out and bought the 4K disc.
I sure did.
Got it. It was sitting on your doorstep. You didn't even know.
Right on my door. Yep.
But I said, I'm like, am I right? I'm like, this is just leave your brain at the door. But you're going to enjoy the hell out of this thing as a home theater fan. And that sometimes in the case of A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, things meld and you get a great story and a great home theater experience.
Right.
And other times you get Hurricane Heist.
Right. But think about it as a home theater enthusiast. How many movies do you think are great that are terrible movies, but they have good sound in them? And
a lot.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So, I'll recommend this movie because it has a great Atmos mix or whatever.
Right.
It doesn't matter that the movie is crap,
Right.
But you'll sit through bad movies if it's just to get the sound experience.
Yeah.
And that's,
any Mark Wahlberg feature.
Right.
No, I like Mark Wahlberg movies.
I do too.
But yeah, it's like, and I only thought of that because he ended up in the Transformers franchise,
right?
Which a lot of people say about the Transformers franchise,
right?
It's all just about what we love, and we were talking before we started recording about sitting and listening to music, and you were talking about have I tried it in my theater, and it's Dolby Atmos,
Dolby
Apple
Atmos
TV,
music,
Atmos music, and it is fantastic. But I'm not one to sit and just listen. I need something else, and like I need to be able to see something. Like Just music on itself, I can work out to it, I can run to it, I can do things to it. I just can't sit still to it.
Right.
But then that's kind of what, and I have listeners that have great setups and they love their music and they just sit in their theaters, in their man caves, and they'll just listen to music, which I just can't sit still. But then at the same time, it's kind of what Transformers is. It's just like a really long music video.
Right, it's a good soundtrack.
Yeah, and you just sit there, or like Rocky IV. It's fantastic music video.
Which is really it's just a bunch of music videos is all that movie is.
That's all that is. And that's being remastered and coming out in the next week or so, right? It's fairly soon.
I need to go see that. I forgot that was coming.
Yeah, that's extra footage. I don't know what you could add to that.
I don't know, but 40 minutes of it. So
40 minutes of
it's another 40-minute music video. I hope they got Survivor back,
40 more minutes of Stallone training naturally and Drago getting injected. How big is he going to get? 40 more minutes of steroids. Oh, yeah. But exactly. That it's just all of that stuff that's what we like to have. Let me ask you this. What's your absolute, if I said name your favorite guilty pleasure, most people hate, but you just love to see?
Oh, man. I don't know.
In a home theater environment. I was like, it has to be a home theater, John. I don't want to talk about that.
I was going to say, there's definitely things, but, oh, man, I don't know.
I got a list of them. Daredevil. I was just talking about this a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, Daredevil is really good.
I just tweeted about that
it's good
week or so ago.
You said, with the sound. It's good because of, like we said, it's a crappy movie that has good sound mix.
Yeah, but I think the movie's made better by the sound because it's a movie about a deaf guy that uses sonar to have this superpower of sight. And I think they nail it in the movie. And you watch that movie, especially the director's cut, the extended version.
Right.
It sounds so good, and it looks pretty good too. It's only Blu-ray. It's not a 4K.
Yeah.
I wish that movie would get a 4K with an Atmos sound, but it'd probably be awesome. I absolutely love that movie. It's a lot of fun, and I call it a guilty pleasure, but I don't feel guilty.
Right.
I enjoy the heck out of it.
I don't know. I can't think of one that everybody dislikes. I mean, there's definitely movies that I love that I can just watch a million times over and over again, but I wouldn't say they're guilty pleasures.
What's funny, what I've found is especially with my listeners, the home theater people, you find it's not a guilty thing. There's all, know what I mean? What most of the public would consider as bad in our world,
right?
We understand we don't even consider it as bad. We just think it's
right. But even most of the ones I would come up with are not ones that most people think are bad.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
What about Lucy? That's one that the story itself, people look at that story and go, that is horrible. You have to see that in a home theater. Because once you get into a home theater, you even forgot there is a story. That thing just bombards you with sound. Yeah. And the imagery, too. Her eye and everything. And
and it's Scarlet. So, I mean.
I said the imagery.
Yeah. Can't be that bad. Well, Aeon Flux, that's another one, right? That's not a great movie, really, but.
What, a movie about a pandemic hits the world and they try to vaccinate everybody and oops, they accidentally it's
they all go sterile.
They all go sterile because they didn't test the vaccination. What could go wrong there?
But yeah, that again, not a great movie, but I like it.
I love that movie. Scarlett, she's
that's Charlize.
Charlize, sorry, I meant to say that. Charlize. Yeah. She's awesome in everything.
Yeah.
I can't think of a movie I don't like her in. And Atomic Blonde, fantastic.
That's another one though, not a great movie.
It's John Wick.
It is. It's definitely John Wick. But...
To be fair, I think the sound and picture in that movie is fantastic. I've reviewed that one here.
Yeah, it's great.
But I think it's actually a better story than John Wick.
It's Jane Wick.
It's Jane Wick. Did you hear that they wanted to cross them over?
Oh, no.
You didn't hear that? I'm
No.
like, how the hell are they going to do that? Because her movie takes place in the 80s.
Yeah.
His takes place modern.
His place now, right. His is current.
Unless they had him, like an origin story of him, and he just, because, like John Wick has powers.
Right.
That's the only thing we haven't seen. They haven't explicitly said yet.
Yeah,
Until
well,
now,
he's
where they
Berserker,
dropped
right.
him off a building. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to
He's
find
just
out.
Berserker.
And she's from, what's the comic that she's doing right now that we love the book on?
Charlize?
Yeah, it's the same thing as Berserker. Not out of time. Charlize, the Netflix movie. And it has the comic that
Old Guard.
Old Guard, which
Yeah.
is basically Berserker. They both have these. Keanu and Charlize have these two movies that are crossing over into comics
Right.
as well, that match up very, very well. But yeah, I
I'm
think
trying to go through my list of movies. Brightburn is definitely another one.
that's a decent movie, though.
It's okay.
It's a great
Hurricane Heist, right?
There you
There's
go.
one right there.
Yeah. Have you recommended that to anybody?
No, because I don't know anybody that's really into this.
See,
besides
okay,
you.
so yeah, that would be a guilty
So,
pleasure one. Like,
Yeah,
you
I've got
kind of keep
Lucy
that one a
here.
secret.
Yeah.
Hurricane
definitely,
Heist. Hurricane Heist. It's in the. It's like if they had another back room at the rental store.
Right. It's got a different set of saloon doors.
Yeah, exactly. There's a
Or
saloon.
different beaded doorway to walk
Different
through.
beaded doorway for like these movies aren't very good, but if you're into home theater,
Right.
and you got to look over your shoulder for you. Does Amy see me going in there?
There's a guy with a trench coat and some headphones, some Beats back there. You
Yeah.
know? He's like,
Does anybody see me going in here? Oh, he's going in for the crappy movies. The shameful home theater movie.
yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, it's funny when I said, have you recommended? I go on and I do a whole podcast to people about it. And it's like, and anybody that did like it, you can't tell anybody about it.
Right. Right. Because that's the thing. You're the only other one that cares. So you told me about it.
I sent it to you.
Yeah.
I literally you went kicking and screaming.
I did.
It's like, yeah, whatever. Where can I get it? Oh, go out in your doorstep.
Yeah. Go on and pick it up. And it was probably there for like 3 days before I found it because I didn't know it was coming.
I know. I got the notice that it got delivered when we were recording, and I didn't want to say anything because I wanted to surprise you. And it wasn't until like 2 days later, you're like, hey, did you send me this? No.
No, somebody else sent it to me.
Yeah.
Some rando that knew my address.
A
sent it
bad
to me.
movie fairy.
Right.
Oh. But yeah, that's what we do. That's what we love. We just want to hear things go boom.
Yep.
What's wrong with that, John?
I mean, it could be worse. It could be worse things. That's what I tell my wife whenever I buy something new. It's like I could be out drinking or doing other things,
Or doing a podcast while drinking.
right. Be thankful that I just want to stay home and watch movies. You know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's worse things we could be doing, John.
Yep.
All right. It's late. It's
It
been
is.
a long night. Another anniversary. We've had 3 years at chat,
Yep.
2 years at home theater,
So it's 5 years altogether.
5 years of podcasting all together. John, all right. And I'll wind the show up with saying this. It's like, I love sitting down here every week talking home theater. And I started by myself sitting here, and then the listeners come in. And I've said it in the podcast to my listeners. I've said it to you in the past, but I'll say it again. I owe it all to you because
Thank you, man. I think you give me too much credit, but I appreciate that.
I wouldn't. No, I flat out. I mean, pardon my French. I wouldn't have the balls to do this by myself. And it was like like we started the podcast with, we we had a blast doing it, but there's a lot of trials and tribulations when you start.
It was a rough road to hoe before we got started. But
before you see the professional display in front of you right now, if you're watching on YouTube, it was ugly.
Uglier.
No, and it was, but it's like you think it's just sit down and talk. And it doesn't. It's not that way. It took us a while to get here. It took me a while to get the stones to be able to do this by myself, and it was working with you and literally working. I mean, we have fun doing this every week, and I don't want to stop. And we said when we started, as long as we sit down and talk every week, we don't care if anybody's even listening. And it's still the case. But it's being able to have talk home theater like this and find. Like, I have I've always had you to talk home theater with, but you listen to like the HD guys, the AV rent guys, and I talk to all these other people, and they all have these friends and they've grown up with these friends. They've met them in the industry, or I've never had that. It's just been me. I can call you, and you and I would talk, but like
I just said, I don't have anybody to talk about it with.
Exactly.
If it's not you.
Yeah.
I've got one customer that comes in that's sort of into it, and we'll talk about things every once in a while. But yeah, I don't have anybody to talk about this with.
It's a very rare thing, and now I have all these listeners that are just like it. That just the feedback and everything like that. It's opened up a whole world for me. My wife's even like, "You're a lot happier now."
Right.
I'm like, yeah, well, that's John.
It's a good thing. Yeah.
And so anniversary number 2, I owe it to you. We got to get back.
Well, thank you.
You got to come back more often.
Yeah.
Because I love just sitting down talking when we break down movies, and we can do individual movies together. But yeah, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome.
And if you want to hear more of John and I talk, you can listen to us on Brightside Chat.
On Brightside Chat every week.
You'll
have too much by then.
Yeah, you hear me all by myself, and then you can hear John and I 2 hours a week. And for some reason, we always come in right around that mark.
Yeah, because we're pros, and we know how.
We
to
don't
do
know how to
show.
tighten it up to an hour.
Right.
We're not.
But we know how to keep it at 2.
We know how to keep it at 2. Because the case of a few weeks ago, you just flat out pass out.
Yeah, I just was done. I gotta go. I'm done.
You did wrap that show up with, "I know you're gonna be angry, but I gotta go."
Yeah.
I'm like, I know. All right. Thank you very much, John. Thank you to everybody making these 2 years awesome. It just all the questions, comments, everything I get. Takeover. That's why we're doing Takeover Tuesdays. Thank you, guys. I owe everything to John, but without the listeners, it's just John and I hanging out talking, and you guys make it awesome. And I know we talk about it all the time, like, hey, check it, because we're getting comments on chat. I get comments here. And it's thrilling. It's amazing. Every time you get a comment, you're just like, wow, they really are. They're still listening, John. They're still listening.
Yeah.
So
they like me.
Yeah, they might not like us, but they're listening.
But they're listening.
They're
That's
listening.
true.
Right.
That's true. There's a distinction there.
I'm not asking for a lot. I didn't say you had to like it. Just listen.
We got a bunch of hate listeners.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. It's like, I mean, love us, hate us. It's an emotion. I'm happy to be triggering something. But all right, thank you, everybody. Have a great week. John, we are having you back soon, maybe at Christmas time. I don't know. It's up to you.
Okay.
You're just such a busy guy watching all that content.
I am so busy. Yes.
All right,
busy
guys.
watching TV.
I'll be back on Tuesday. Have a great weekend, everybody, and go push play. Hey, Fred. This has been a Hey Fred production with theme music by Jeff Bernhardt and Throne Vault Productions.